Hello to my fellow instrumentalists who have already subscribed to the channel, and hi to the rest of you who haven't yet. I'm Jacques Gadway, and this is Gadway Violin. In today's episode of Making Decisions on the Violin, we're taking a look at the next page. This is the second page of Bruch's Violin Concerto. In this series, I, a professional violinist, take a look at a piece of music that usually is suggested in the comments, and most of the time, I either haven't played the piece or haven't played it in quite some time. This is one of those where I've definitely played this piece before, but it's been quite a while. This is a piece that I played early in high school. Though, like most people, I probably played it a little too early in my violin career. It's actually a lot more challenging than it seems to a lot of violinists. So we're going to take a look at the second page here. It's a very romantic concerto, and we're going to talk about fingerings, bowings, and different decisions that I make throughout my practice to make sure that I'm using my time effectively. As violinists, we have to spend a lot of time practicing, but much of the time we spend it maybe inefficiently. So hopefully this series will show us some better ways to use our time as we're seeing me use it in my own practice. So let's take a look at the second page here. As you can see, what we're going to practice today starts off in this kind of expressive section, and then moves on to the second half, which is getting into those really thorny bits. So starting off right at the top, we're going to use the suggested fingerings at the beginning, and then go from there. So already so far, I can honestly say that I really like these fingerings that we see here. I like starting in third, like it suggests, and then shifting down, taking advantage of this beautiful D string sound for this F natural, E natural, and E flat. But while these fingerings are really quite beautiful, I think that they're a little bit clunky, and I actually remember when I was learning this long ago that these fingerings didn't feel good for me at the time. I think that they feel really nice when you are very comfortable shifting around and doing a lot of these extra things to be expressive with your fingerings, but you don't necessarily need to do it. In fact, I don't think it's the most convenient fingering. We don't usually pick fingerings in these romantic sections based off of convenience. But I think it's worth noting that it's not the most effective fingering, or rather said, the most ergonomic fingering. It's certainly a beautiful fingering, and if you're up for it, you can definitely do it. But let's talk about some alternatives that might be a little easier, might take a little bit less practice to get pretty up to performance quality. So we can still start in third position, like is marked here. I just did something that felt pretty natural, and I'll write it in here. In this, I started in third position as marked, but I didn't shift to second finger. I stayed in third position, which meant that I was on a fourth here on the G string, and then I used a third finger for both of these. And then I shifted down to a second finger here, I believe. And then if we want to keep that portamento that we're creating with this original fingering for that third leap, we can do so without doing a big shift. We can do a small one, going from second finger in first position to a third finger in second position. And that gives us that portamento. As a result, we can shift down on this half step from this second position first finger to a second finger in half position. I actually quite like this. It's a little bit strange, but let's take a look at it in context again. So I'm going to do that bottom fingering that I just wrote. So we shift here. And we're going to we could technically play this D natural with a fourth finger. But if we want to maintain that nice portamento, that soupy quality we like in these romantic sections, then we need to do some kind of shift there. And we can do that by shifting to second position. And then I like going into half position here, again, just to get a little bit of that portamento between notes. So going to a second finger, then a first here, as would be natural in that position. And then in my fingering, I'm still going up to this harmonic on that fourth finger. And then using this third finger after the harmonic. So from this measure here, so we use that harmonic to re-establish our hand into that third position. Generally, fourth finger harmonics, if you thought about it practically, like without any stretching, a fourth finger harmonic would be in fourth position, right? That fourth finger on that G is where that fourth finger would naturally be if I was in fourth position. However, because the hand shape for harmonics is different than for natural solid notes, I actually prefer to use a flattened finger, which means that it's going to be naturally stretched. So I actually generally think of my fourth finger harmonics as being from third position with a stretched four. So we would think about this shift as going to third position and then stretching our fourth finger. And then therefore our first finger is already where it should be on the D string. So that fingering works out nicely if we want that harmonic sound. Now this next part is where this fingering gets really cumbersome and overly complicated, I think. What's suggested is to go on the D string. It's not written, but it wants us to go on the D string here, I believe. To give us, again, that portamento. So that would look like this. Which is quite beautiful. If we didn't go to the D string and we assumed that that was actually meaning to go to the A string, I don't know. That just, I don't think any violinist that would be editing this would have suggested that. So that just doesn't seem right to me. I think most likely it's asking us to go to the D string up to fifth position and then back down to third. But again, to me that's just a little bit awkward. It's beautiful and I feel confident enough to do it in my own playing, but you don't have to feel pressured by these suggested fingerings to do it exactly as written. I think you want to meet yourself exactly where you are in your level and find the fingering that's going to help you progress in your studies, but also is going to be reliable. We don't want to create fingerings that are going to be unreliable and give us overwhelming stress while we perform. So if we still wanted that portamento, but we didn't want to go all the way up to fifth position, we could just go to fourth. And then I almost want to... If we wanted to have this finger replacement still, which is what we're effectively trying to do, 2 replaced by 4, to give us a little bit of different taste on that third C natural, we could do the same kind of effect with a different fingering. And I actually prefer this kind of sweep underneath for the portamento. So what I would do naturally is I would find a different finger for this first C natural. Maybe even not have a portamento. I could even do a fourth finger. But if we really wanted a portamento, we could do a third finger. And then we could replace that fourth finger with a second finger here. And then we have a nice half step later on to take us back out of position potentially. So I'm going to first do the version where I use the fourth finger. So it gives us a little bit of that finger replacement, but we don't benefit from the first portamento. So now with the third finger. I like it. Maybe we can do the third finger and then go to a fourth finger. I like that too. So a kind of combination of the initial fingering choice and our fingering choice. So while it was originally telling us to go to a second finger, we can replace that with a third finger just so that it's a little bit less of a shift in either direction. Yeah, I like it. We don't have to get overly complicated with this stuff, but these are all worthy considerations, I think. All right, moving on from there. Yeah, again, this fingering, like, it works. I just don't know if I love it. Generally, I just don't like the 4/4, and that's what this is presenting here. It's presenting that we do a fourth finger here, and we shift down to a fourth finger. And for me, maintaining that vibrato across that shift from the fourth finger to the fourth finger is a little bit awkward. So if instead we just stay in position, we have opportunities to get out of position later on with these half steps, potentially. Always looking for half steps, strong beats, or long notes to shift after. Let's go right on that D natural. So we're in fourth position here. We're staying. What can we do? It wants us on the third finger here. Yeah, we could. We could do this where we shift down to a third finger there, but we don't need to. Instead, we could shift, we're on a second finger here, right? Because we're in fourth position currently. We could shift down on that half step to a third finger here if you're comfortable with second position, which you probably should be if you're playing this concerto. And that actually works out where we're in second position for this whole bit afterwards. So from the beginning of that measure. I like to use an open E here and use it to get down to first position. And I like to be in first position there, basically just because it makes the trills a lot brighter, I think. As opposed to, which is what it's suggesting. So yeah, I would like to come down to first position. Yeah, with all these trills, the big thing is try your best not to feel like you're vibratoing those trills. When I played this a long time ago, I can remember actually trying to create these trills with a lot more of the hand, which seems great, but we want to develop that skill of just allowing that finger to be in charge of those trills. And the way we think about it in order to speed it up and develop comfort is we think about lifting the finger very fast. So we don't think about tapping it excessively, we think about lifting it. Let's see here. So here I actually do like this fingering. I didn't do it, but I like it. So it's asking us to use this fourth finger here. So shifting down on this half step from the A flat to the G. I think I like it. So shifting between those. And then shifting from sixth down to fourth. I like it. Some of these suggested fingerings aren't only beautiful, they actually are quite comfortable. Not all of them. A lot of them are beautiful but not comfortable. There's no suggested fingering here, but I think we're just going to go up to a fourth finger and then shift down where it says. I like the suggested fingerings here for the most part. I don't like this one though. Remember, when we're deciding on fingerings, we're looking for strong beats, we're looking for half steps, and we're looking for long notes to shift afterwards. So all of our rules are pointing to a good place to shift being between these two notes. And for some reason the suggested fingering is over here. Don't love it. I would just shift down here to first position. So let's look at what that sounds like. And then I don't know if I love all those ups. It's cool, but maybe a little bit more variation by doing some of them separate. Maybe the first two. Or maybe the last two. Oops. Something to give us a little bit of variation there. I think I'm going to go with separating the first two of that slur. Oops. I think that's just going to be a little bit more artsy, perhaps. Let's go from there and move on. Oops, I think I got a little too high there. Eesh, I kind of hate that shift, honestly, but I don't know what the alternative would be. Just seems so abrupt, such a large shift, going from, what is that, 8th position all the way down to 3rd. we could even just decrease the distance of that shift a little bit by just going to fourth instead of third. But if you're like really comfortable with third position and not super comfortable with fourth, then maybe you go with the suggested fingering for that reason. But I think that decreasing the distance of the shift will make it a little bit less clunky. Maybe that's another option. All right, that second fingering option underneath, which is where we shift onto the downbeat into sixth position, and then we shift into the half measure into fourth position. So breaking that into two separate shifts instead of one large one. So this is the bottom fingering. Oops. The problem with breaking it into two different shifts is that you have two opportunities to make a mistake on a shift as opposed to just one, right? But with a little bit of practice, I'm sure it'll be fine. Yeah, with a little bit of determination and focus, even that will be fine. After that, if we use that bottom fingering, we're on a first finger on this B flat. And if we use the top fingering from before, then we're on a second finger. But either way, I'm going to not do what's natural and just make sure that I'm on a second finger there. Or we can even go into a lower position where we're on a third or a fourth finger there. But the bottom line is, I don't want to be on a first finger because right after we play this B flat on the E string, we gotta play a B flat on the A string. And we don't want to use a first finger for both. It's a little bit clunky and it requires you to lift the finger from one string to then place it onto another. If you use a different finger, like second finger here, first finger can be a little bit more prepared. So let's imagine we're on a second finger here. It says 2DAC. Not sure exactly the exact translation there, but what it means is we're going to be playing this on the second string, which is the A string. So all of these B flats here we want to play on the second string. And we'll just use the fingering that allows us to be in the lowest position necessary, which is the fourth finger. But if you don't have a solid vibrato on the fourth finger, then maybe you'll have to find a different fingering. Oops. Yeah, I like the fourth finger. I think it's fine. But you can do third finger instead. But then you have a little bit more distance to go back into fourth position. But either way should work. And then it suggests, again, to do this kind of 4-4, which for me, if you just look, it's just a little bit uncomfortable. So shift that fourth finger and try and maintain the vibrato at the same time. It's super awkward. Just playing a third finger would be a lot easier in my opinion. So I'm going to get rid of the 4 and then we're just going to stay in position. That's what those parentheses will mean. It means it's the finger that we're expecting to use in that position. So assuming we're in fourth position, we'll be on a 2 here. And then let's see how this works out. Hmm. Kind of hate it. Let's see. Do we want to go to the D string on the second note or on the third? Here or here? I think we're going to go on the third note. So that means that we need to find a way to play the second note on the A string. And then we see this suggested fingering here, which means that they want us to shift and stay on the D string. And I actually quite like the idea of playing these notes on the D string. The question is, what fingering do we use? Do we need to use that third finger? Can we use another one? I think that we can do a few things. Let's try a few things back to back, and then we'll just feel out what works. I don't hate it. So unfortunately, it seems like for me, the simpler the fingering is, the less attractive it is for this particular spot. I think that I like most a combination of my fingering and the suggested fingering. So we do what I wrote here, which is where we shift down to third position. I'm also breaking the bow out of necessity into two, and then shifting up to a third finger right here. So really into fifth position. And then as a result, we do need to do the suggested fingering where we shift down to third position. And I just think it is the most expressive. Just feels the most, I don't know, the most romantic. And that's what we're trying to do, right? We're playing this romantic concerto. All right, after all that beauty, we get into some really thorny bits. We're going to take it from the odd tempo here. Moving on. Let's see how this is. I can already tell you we're not going to do that up bow. I don't like it. I don't like this fingering. To me, if we shift here like it suggests, it's suggesting to shift from effectively a third finger to a 1, and we only have a 16th note worth of time to accomplish that shift, which is possible, but the fact that we have to land on a 5th makes me a little nervous and just makes it feel really clunky. So instead, I think I want to shift to a nearer finger. So let's use second finger instead for the 5th and see if that feels comfortable. It feels potentially comfortable. Didn't quite work though. Oh yeah. Yeah, I could see working that out to where it's really comfortable. Yeah, and then all I'm doing for this next part is I'm using not the fingering suggested. Instead, since I'm on a second finger here, I'm thinking about that second finger moving from this E flat up to an E natural. So up a half step to an E natural. And then I'm thinking about placing my third finger a whole step away. It's a little bit confusing, but that G flat is essentially just an F sharp, right? So I'm thinking about, I'm on that fifth on the E flat, B flat. I'm thinking about moving that second finger up a half step. And then I'm thinking about placing that third finger on a G flat, which is just an F sharp, just a whole step away. And then placing my fourth finger on that E flat, which is just a D sharp, just a whole step away from the F sharp or the G flat. So that whole little section would look like this. Oof. Let's try that again. The name of the game when we're practicing for intonation in violin playing is frames of reference. So having this level of structure is going to allow you to be effective with your practice. The more often you can play it in tune at a slow tempo, the better your practice is going, because the only way to develop that muscle memory is for the muscle to practice doing it. So you have to practice doing it correctly and succeeding. So creating these frames of reference is the best way to make sure, even in the early stages of repetition, that you're being very effective with your repetition. So I'm thinking about that second finger. It's on a D natural right now. Moving up a half step. Then I'm thinking about that E flat, second finger, moving up another half step. And then I'm placing my third finger a whole step away, fourth finger a whole step away. Now, let's look at this next part. We got this crazy scale, right? That's scary. But it's actually really comfortable in the hand. And if we're on a fourth finger here, we'll use a different color. If we're on a fourth finger here, and this note is the same as this note, then we can start to use this as a frame of reference, right? But how exactly are we going to use this? Well, first off, we're not going to use this fingering. I don't like it because it's not letting us benefit from exactly what I'm talking about. If we replace this fourth finger, if we replace it with a third finger, and then we stretch our fourth finger away from that, then our first finger can be exactly where it wants to be. And then, after we play these three notes here, we can simply shift all the way down to a third finger, which brings us back down into first position. And then we've done everything difficult about that run in the first three notes. And the rest of the run will be fine so long as we have the first three notes really comfortable. So I'm going to go really slowly to take a look at that. So we have our fourth finger on that E flat. We're going to replace it with the third finger. Then we're going to make sure our first finger is underneath where appropriately it would be. Right? We're going to stretch our fourth finger to where the G flat is going to be, which is just an F sharp, right? So how far is that away from where the fourth finger normally wants to go? If the fourth finger is going to normally go on the F natural, it's just going to be a half step higher. And then we shift all the way down to first, and it's home free. If we think about those G flats as F sharps, we can just use that first finger here, second finger here, and that's actually really comfortable for the hand. And then the last three notes, just like how the first three notes contained most of the difficulty, the last three notes contain the rest of the difficulty. Because we just have another shift, right? We have to shift up now, staying on that G string. And it just feels comfortable to me to do all of this in one bow and then add an up bow for that last little bit. Let me just do a little retake. If we do this fingering that's written here, where we go up to fourth position there, we're already in fourth position for this chord, right? So we just do this little retake, and it's actually really comfortable. Now, frames of reference. Always looking for frames of reference. The next section, we got to be on an F natural on a second finger. We are going to use this fingering pretty much. I think I'm going to change the end here though. Let's see. If we just played a third finger on a D natural and we need to put a second finger on an F natural, that third finger needs to go to a G, right? So thinking about that as a way of giving us context for shifting between these two positions. So that third finger's on a D. We need that second finger to end up on this F natural. One thing we can think of is the first finger going to where the third finger is currently, because we're going to sixth position. Another thing we can think of is that third finger shifting all the way up to a G. Oops, I said what? I said first finger replacing third finger. That's not correct. First finger going a whole step above third finger is what I meant. We're in fourth position here. If we want that second finger on the F natural, that means the first finger is going to be on an E natural, which is a whole step above where the third finger is currently. Adding these different frames of reference is going to allow us to really structure our motions so that even in our slow practice already we're executing them properly and we're developing good repetitions. Where that fourth finger naturally goes on that E natural, that's where the first finger is going to go. And then we're placing the second finger on the F natural, which is just a half step away from that. So, assuming we've structured how to get into this position, I like using the shift that's written here. So shifting down to third here, and then not doing the shift later, staying in third this whole way until we need to get out on that A flat. This allows us to play 3 of these notes naturally on the G string, which I think is just a nice texture, or not texture, timbre. Just makes it sound all the more strong and present. All that's in first position after that. Then another fingering that I would just change here. Instead of shifting, why not just take advantage of the rest and shift before? So start in third position. It's just a little bit more comfortable. And then I think the next shift is probably going to be good. If we shift here to sixth position, that means that this A flat is not going to land naturally in that position, but I think we're just going to stretch for it. Let's take a look. Ooh, and then we're doing the fingered octaves here. Yeah, I remember now. So we've stretched for 4. And instead of doing 4 1 octaves, we're going to do 4/2 octaves. And we're going to think about how that second finger is a half step away from where our first finger is currently placed. Our first finger is currently placed on that natural sixth position, we might call it, which could be thought of as where that G natural is. We're shifting to that sixth position on that D. That second finger is going to find that A flat, which is only a half step, a physical half step above that D, or in other words, a half step above where that first finger would be on the A string, if we placed it there. And if we do that, it works out where we do it for these two notes, the A flats and the Gs, and then our second finger's on the G already, so then we just place our third finger, and then we're going into a normal sixth fingering, and then we shift down into fourth position here. It's going to work nicely. Oops. Well, if you practice it. Let's try. With a little bit of practice, it starts to get a little bit better. But making sure that you have these frames of reference is the key to starting from the very beginning, having these very effective repetitions. All right, let's do it one more time, going on. Yeah, the last thing that I didn't mention is we're just following these fingerings as written. So we're on a first finger here, and then we'd be shifting down, or actually we're staying in position because this is all just second position, and we're shifting down here to first position. And then all of this is just in first position. Pretty simple. Yeah, the suggested bowing here is kind of gnarly. To actually slur in each of these. Yeah, I hate it. We're not doing that. I'm gonna do simpler. Just always a down bow on those half measures, I think makes more sense. Okay, lots to talk about with fingerings here. I'm not even sure what I did. It's just what feels natural for these shapes. First, let's just mark our bowing here. Down, up, down. So splitting this slur, not doing the last bit of it. That works. And then this is all just in first position. But then here, let's see, what's natural? Yeah, I'm doing, I think, a combination of the two fingering suggestions here. So I'm doing 1 and 2, not doing the 4 and 2, but then I'm not doing the fourth finger. I like the sound of this open E. I like how it brightly strikes the middle or the end of that run. I'm just doing the fingering exactly as written on the second half. So a couple options or other things to think about is some people will like to do low fours for these C sharps. I prefer personally to have a more open hand than a closed hand, which means I'm going to use a lot of these stretched fingers rather than compressed fingers. But the preference is really going to be up to your hand. After we reach the end of this, it goes into a completely new section, which I don't think we're going to look over today. So instead of doing that, I just want to quickly review everything that we went over, play through it, and see how much has stuck from this less than an hour practice session of a single page. Sometimes some pieces of music you can learn the whole thing in an hour maybe, but with concertos that's not going to be possible. So let's see how much we got done with our hour today. See how much of this stuck. We're going to try and use all of the fingerings and decisions that we've already talked about. Use the wrong fingering there. And then let's try the next section. Alright, so not everything stuck, that's for sure. Lots of mistakes, but it's very clear what I'm trying to do and what my decisions were. So it's just a matter of repetition in the practice room to get all this stuff a lot cleaner. But I hope in seeing this, you can see exactly the level of specificity that is necessary when creating these fingerings and bowings and understanding exactly what you're doing so that your repetitions are effective or as effective as possible. As you saw today, we did maybe 3 repetitions for each of these difficult things, and some of it stuck. Imagine if you did 10 each day, right? You would get a lot done. Now, we focused a lot today on fingerings, but realistically, one of the most challenging things in this piece is going to be bow distribution. Something which we didn't talk a whole lot about, but if I were to practice this page again tomorrow, that would probably be one of my primary focuses, making sure that I feel comfortable with my bow distribution and my bowing choices. So with that, that's been an hour of hopefully somewhat useful practice, hopefully somewhat useful tips. If you like this style of content or advice, let me know in the comments below. Like this video, and please subscribe so you don't miss a future one. And also, leave in the comments if there's a piece of music you'd like me to look at in the future. I'd love to go over it. There's plenty of pieces in the violin repertoire I've never played. This one I had played a long time ago, but I'm looking forward to learning some pieces that I've never learned before. So keep suggesting things so that I can find out and learn alongside you some new repertoire. As always, happy practicing. Thanks so much for watching.